So thank you for joining me for our third Tuesday trivia, or Trivia Tuesday. And today we are looking at Grauman's Chinese theater and its relationship to Chicago. So just a little bit about the theater before we start throwing the questions at you here. And I have 4 pictures on screen to tell you a little bit about Grauman's Chinese theater. So it first and foremost is a movie palace out in Hollywood. This is not in Chicago, but we are going to talk about its relationship to Chicago. This is generally considered the most sought after theater in Hollywood for premiering a movie. The big studio premieres are going to want to go to Grauman's Chinese Theater for that purpose. We are celebrating it today because it opened on this day, May the 18th of 1927. So 94 years ago is when this movie theater opened, with the premiere of that movie in the bottom of your screen, Cecil B. DeMille's King of Kings. So the theater was established by the guy above that poster, Sid Grauman, for about $2 million. There were many fittings or different architectural elements of the Grauman's Chinese theater that were imported from China. So they're trying to make this theater as original, I guess maybe is not the best word, but as close to what it could be as far as Chinese adornments as they could. So they brought in Chinese artisans as well to create sculptures, some of which are still actually in the theater itself if you go visit it. And finally, the last thing you probably need to know about Grauman's Chinese theater is that it immortalizes all of the movie stars with their cement hands and footprints outside in its not lobby area, but the concrete area right before you get to the theater itself. And you can see that with the image on the far right that says, "To Sid Grauman," of course, who gave me my first job in Myrna Loy's handprints and footprints there. All right, so now you know a little bit about the theater itself. So let's explore some Chicago connections to this classic theater. And really quickly, just a reminder about the rules. No cheating. You probably will not have time to do that anyway because you only have 10 seconds to respond, so it's going to be more difficult to Google any of these answers. Number 3, this is individual, not team play. You can certainly have other people there with you answering questions, but the answer sheet requires only 1 email, so that's why it's considered individual play. And again, the first person to submit a correct answer sheet receives a prize, and you'll get an email with that prize if you are indeed the winner. And of course, number 5, have fun. All right, so let's get started here with question number 1. Which silent and sound era star began her career at age 15 after being cast as an extra while touring a movie studio in Chicago? Her handprint ceremony took place in 1927. So this is a silent and sound era film star, begins her career at age 15 because after she was cast as an extra while going on a tour of a movie studio in Chicago. Was it A, Mary Pickford, B, Joan Crawford, C, Gloria Swanson, or D, Colleen Moore? Silent and sound era movie star who began her career at age 15 after she toured a movie studio and was cast as an extra. Her handprint ceremony happened in 1927. All right, number 2. In 1933, which comedy act who once owned a chicken farm outside Chicago extended its best wishes in concrete to Sid Grauman? Was it Laurel and Hardy, the Marx Brothers, the Three Stooges, or Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis? A comedy act who once owned a chicken farm outside Chicago extended its best wishes in concrete in 1933 outside the theater. All right, here's question number 3. Which Hollywood movie star whose handprints sit next to Fred Astaire's and Ginger Rogers honed her singing talent at the 1933 Chicago World's Fair? Was it A, Judy Garland, B, Carmen Miranda, C, Rita Hayworth, or D, Lena Horne? Hollywood movie star who honed her singing talent at the 1933 Chicago World's Fair. Her handprints are next to some other musical stars, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. right, 2 more questions. Number 4. In 2018, which Chicago-born composer dipped his hands and feet in cement while admitting that at age 15 he sat in movie theaters addicted, thinking about composing music for movies? Was it Hans Zimmer, John Williams, Quincy Jones, or Danny Elfman? His hand ceremony was in 2018 and admits that at age 15 he was addicted to movies, thinking about composing music for them. Hans Zimmer, John Williams, Quincy Jones, or Danny Elfman? How are we doing so far? All right, 1 more to go. Number 5, after her 2014 hand and footprint ceremony, this comedian said that when she moved from the Chicago suburbs out to Los Angeles, she immediately visited Grauman's Chinese theater and remembers thinking, wow, actresses from the 50s and 60s had little baby feet. Is this A, Frances McDormand, B, Joan Cusack, C, Bonnie Hunt, or D, Melissa McCarthy? First thing she did was go out and visit Grauman's Chinese theater after moving from the Chicago suburbs. Frances McDormand, Joan Cusack, Bonnie Hunt, or Melissa McCarthy? All right, the answers are coming in. So far, there are no 5 out of 5s, but there is a 4 out of 5. All right, I'll give it a little bit longer. All right, so far we still just have the 1 4 out of 5. So if no one can top that, then Michelle is going to be today's winner. So I'll check back over there in just a second and see what the situation is. But let's go over the answers here really quickly with Grauman's Chinese Theater in Chicago. So number 1, which silent and sound era star began her career at age 15 after being cast as an extra while touring a movie studio in Chicago? Her handprint ceremony took place in 1927, so very early handprint ceremony here. And the answer is C, Gloria Swanson, which it does look as though several of you were getting that one correct. So just a little bit of a note here about Gloria Swanson, since we're talking about her. She became famous through silent movies, nominated at least, I think, 3 times for Academy Awards. She was born in Chicago around the age of 15, as the question says. Her aunt took her to tour SNA film studio, which is represented by the image in the middle there, which was in Chicago in the Uptown neighborhood. Afterward, Swanson was offered a role as an extra in a movie as she was touring through this studio. More films, of course, would follow and her career would start to unfold because of this little tour that she was on at SNA. Some of these movies that she would be starring in later on in her career, she would also produce. So she's not just an actress, she's also a producer for Hollywood film. She had a comeback in 1950 with the image represented there on the right, or the film represented on the bottom right, which is Sunset Boulevard. That movie earned her a Golden Globe Award and another Oscar nomination. So, and one other interesting thing about Gloria Swanson, or interesting to me at least, that she was a vegetarian and sort of a health food nut way before that was a mainstream thing. So just a little bit of interesting personal history there with Gloria Swanson as well. All right, so question number 2. In 1933, which comedy act who once owned a chicken farm outside Chicago extended its best wishes in concrete to Sid Grauman? The answer to that is the Marx Brothers. Yes, they lived in Chicago for about 10 years of their professional career. And here is the hands and footprints of all of the Marx Brothers there on the left, and of course the brothers themselves represented on the right. But yeah, the Marx family had a house in Chicago on South Grand Boulevard for about 10 years. 1924 to 1926. Their mother supposedly moved them here because of Chicago's railroad lines, which were far-reaching at the time for the thriving vaudeville circuit, which they were definitely a part of, and were doing well on in that entertainment venue. And around 1917, you can see there the second bullet point, the Marx Brothers and the family bought a chicken farm near Joliet and LaGrange Roads, which is about 15 miles west of Chicago proper. Some people say that the family bought this so that the brothers, because they would be listed as farmers, would not have to go to war. They could avoid the draft, in other words. They did not know much about farming at all. I believe in one book or one interview, Groucho Marx later claims that the brothers spent so much time at Wrigley Field watching the Cubs that the farm was just not economically viable at all because they did not tend to it. Nonetheless, they of course make their way to Hollywood, and in 1933 you can see them there extending their best wishes to Sid Grauman from the Marx Brothers. All right, so chicken farm in Chicago. Number 3, which Hollywood movie star whose handprints sit next to Fred Astaire's and Ginger Rogers's honed her singing talent at the 1933 Chicago World's Fair? That is Judy Garland, and I do see a couple of you writing that answer correctly in the comments. So here's Judy Garland on the far left with her sisters, a very young Judy Garland, and her name at that point was not Judy Garland, it was Frances Gumm, G-U-M-M. This group, the sisters, they toured and they sang on the vaudeville circuit, much like the Marx Brothers we were talking about a moment ago. In July of 1934, as the World's Fair was entering its second year in Chicago, the Gumm sisters performed at a nightclub on the fair's midway. They also performed at several theaters in the Chicago area during the World's Fair as well. And there she is on the far right with Mickey Rooney, her constant screen partner, outside Grauman's doing the handprint ceremony there. All right, so Judy Garland, World's Fair. Number 4, in 2018, which Chicago-born composer dipped his hands and feet in cement while admitting that at age 15, he sat in theaters addicted, thinking about composing music for movies? That is going to be Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones is a Chicagoan. And in this article here, where it's talking about his handprint ceremony, he says, I was so addicted at 15 years old. I used to sit in the theater and think about composing music for these films. I could never have imagined that those dreams would lead me to here, to this moment, and to be honest, it's a bit overwhelming. So he says that while he is at Grauman's Chinese Theater. Quincy Jones was born in 1933 on the south side of Chicago. His family moved from the south to Chicago as part of the Great Migration. He leaves Chicago in 1943, so he doesn't stay here very long in his childhood, but he goes to Washington State. He also would arrange and conduct music for Frank Sinatra as well as Michael Jackson. He's also scored, which is why we're mentioning him here today, several movies, including The Wiz, In the Heat of the Night, The Color Purple. He also scored the theme song to Sanford and Son and the score to the miniseries Roots. All right, so there's Quincy Jones and his handprint ceremony there at Grauman's Chinese Theater. And question number 5. After her 2014 ceremony, this comedian said that when she moved from the Chicago suburbs to Los Angeles, she immediately visited Grauman's and remembers thinking, actresses from the 50s and 60s had little baby feet. So that is Melissa McCarthy. And she is quoted in this article here at her handprint ceremony by saying, when I first moved to Los Angeles 17 years ago, one of the first things I did was come to this theater to look at the handprints and the signatures. And I remember thinking everyone's feet were so small. All the actresses from the 50s and 60s had little baby feet. And I never thought I would be here signing my name in the cement. It's pretty remarkable. So Melissa McCarthy is from Plainfield, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. She has also, in movies that she has produced with her husband, has integrated Chicago into several of her comedies. The TV show Mike and Molly is supposedly set, or it is set in Chicago, but not filmed here. Her movie The Boss and Thunder Force, I think Bridesmaids is also set partly in Chicago, although I don't know that she had any doing in that. All right, so there's our 5 trivia questions today. If you are interested in more film and Chicago-related stuff, You can check out Thursday, the same time, 9:30 a.m. We're going to have our part 2 of Film First and the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. So if Judy Garland's time at the World's Fair piqued your interest, you might want to come back on Thursday for that. And Sunday, May the 23rd at 4 o'clock, we're going to have yet another 10-minute tour. I think this is our 20th 10-minute tour, and we're going to be focusing on Bob Newhart's Chicago, looking at 3 locations that Bob Newhart would have frequented. And next week, we're going to do one final trivia, at least for the month of May, and that is going to be focusing on Walt Disney's dogs and their relationship to Chicago. All right, so thank you so much for joining me this morning, and I hope you have an excellent rest of the day.